The night air over Milwaukee felt heavy, stale, almost like it was holding its breath, waiting for something to snap. At the Oxford Apartments, a worn beige building on 924 North 25th Street, most windows were dark, most doors locked, most residents asleep. Then, out of nowhere, one door slammed open. A man stumbled into the hallway. Tracy Edwards, shaking violently, a single steel handcuff clamped to his wrist, sprinted barefoot toward the exit, as if the entire building was trying to swallow him whole. He kept looking over his shoulder. "He's gonna kill me! He's gonna kill me!" Edwards whispered, then shouted, then whispered again, his voice breaking in and out like a man fighting consciousness. He crashed through the front door and stumbled into the street, waving his arms with desperate, jerking motions. Down the block, officers Rolf Miller and Robert Routh were patrolling in their squad car. They saw Edwards before they even heard him. The handcuff, the panic, the way he kept backing away from the apartment, as if something inside was pulling at him. Muller rolled down the window and called out, "Hey, hey, what's going on? What happened?" Edwards pointed back at the building, breath hitching. "A man. He tried to kill me. He had a knife. You gotta help me," he begged, voice trembling so hard the words nearly shattered. The officers stepped out of the car, exchanging a quick look, the kind of look that silently says, "This is serious." Routh approached slowly, palms open. "Who did this?" he asked. Edwards swallowed hard. "Jeff. Jeffrey Dahmer. He's in there. Apartment 213. Please, please, don't leave me out here," he murmured, almost collapsing. Mueller nodded once, firm. "All right. You're coming with us. We're gonna check this out." His tone shifted, calm, controlled, police mode, but with a sharp edge of urgency. Edwards hesitated, shaking his head. "No, I'm not going back in there. I'm not," he whispered. But Muller guided him gently, saying, "You won't be alone. Stay behind us, all right?" Inside the Oxford Apartments, the hallway lights flickered, buzzing, dim, unsteady. Edwards walked between the two officers, every step tighter than the last. When they reached apartment 213, Mueller knocked hard. "Milwaukee Police Department. Open the door," he instructed, voice carrying through the hallway. There was a pause, a long one. Then the door opened a few inches, slow, cautious. Jeffrey Dahmer stood there, shirtless, glasses fogged slightly, expression blank, too blank. His voice came out strangely calm. "What seems to be the problem, officers?" He glanced at Edwards with a tiny flicker of annoyance, almost like someone inconvenienced during a routine evening. Mueller asked, "We're here because this man says he was attacked by you. Can we come in?" Dahmer blinked, jaw tightening for a second. Just a second. before he stepped aside. Yeah, sure. It's all just a misunderstanding, he murmured. The moment the officers stepped inside, something hit them. An odor. Sharp. Chemical. Wrong. Routh scanned the room, eyes narrowing. The apartment was small, cluttered, dimly lit by a single yellow lamp. A fish tank glowed in one corner, casting a strange shimmer across the walls. Edward stood frozen near the doorway, refusing to move any further. Muller spotted a drawer slightly open. Inside, Polaroids. A stack of them. "What's this?" he asked, reaching in. Dahmer stepped forward quickly, too quickly, muttering, "Those are private. You don't need to." His voice was nervous now, cracked at the edges. Muller pulled the first Polaroid free, then another, and another. His face changed immediately. His jaw clenched, eyes widening with a sudden cold realization. He whispered, almost under his breath, "Oh my God." Then louder, backing away, "Routh, these are real. These are real." His voice wasn't shocked. It was horrified. Dahmer lunged, sudden, wild, desperate. "No, don't," he shouted. Routh reacted instantly, grabbing Dahmer and pinning him against the wall. Muller dropped the Polaroids, reached for his cuffs. "Get on the ground. Now," he instructed, voice booming through the apartment. Dahmer struggled for a moment, then stopped, defeated. As the handcuffs clicked around Dahmer's wrists, Muller stared at him, stunned, breathing hard. "What the hell did you do?" he asked quietly, not expecting an answer. Dahmer simply murmured, "I should die for what I've done." His voice was soft, almost emotionless, as if the truth had finally been forced into the open. Edwards, standing in the doorway, covered his face with both hands. Relief and horror tangled together. "Thank you. Oh God, thank you," he whispered, knees buckling. Routh steadied him with one hand, while Muller called for backup. Sirens wailed in the distance. The hallway filled with neighbors peeking out through cracked doors, confused and frightened. The officers led Dahmer out of the apartment, quiet, pale, strangely calm again. Edwards watched him pass by, his breath shaking like he was still trying to convince himself he was alive. Behind them, apartment 213 remained open, the yellow lamp buzzing, the Polaroids scattered across the floor like the final truth spilling out. In minutes, detectives would flood the room. In hours, the entire city would know the name Jeffrey Dahmer. And in one night, 17 families would finally learn what happened to their sons. Jeffrey Lionel Dahmer entered the world on May 21, 1960, in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. A quiet baby, a sickly child, and eventually a boy who learned early how to disappear into the background. The Dahmer household looked ordinary from the outside, but inside, tension hummed like an electrical wire ready to snap. His parents, Lionel and Joyce, argued often, whispered fights turning into shouted ones, slammed doors turning into long stretches of silence. Jeffrey usually sat alone, listening from the hallway, staring at the carpet as if it could swallow him whole. When Jeffrey was 8, the family moved to Bath, Ohio, a place full of woods, long roads, and quiet evenings. He wandered often, hands in his pockets, eyes on the ground. Neighbors would later describe him as polite but distant, a kid who didn't quite fit into the rhythm of normal childhood. His father worked long hours. His mother's mental health struggles worsened. The atmosphere inside the house grew tense enough that Jeffrey preferred staying outside, wandering, searching for things he couldn't explain to anyone. By his early teens, Jeffrey had started drinking. Not casually, not socially, but like someone trying to mute a noise that lived inside his head. Classmates saw the bottle tucked inside his army jacket. Teachers noticed his zoning out, his blank stare, his slurred mumbling when called on. When asked about his drinking, Jeffrey would shrug and, "It helps," as if that alone justified everything. The adults didn't push hard enough. As the years passed, his isolation deepened. He watched other students laugh, date, fight, grow, all the things teenagers do, while he floated beside them like a ghost tethered to a body. His parents' marriage was collapsing by then, their arguments louder, messier, sharper. Lionel left the home at one point. Joyce left soon after, taking Jeffrey's younger brother with her. They didn't take Jeffrey. They didn't even argue about it. He was 17, alone in the house, unsupervised, and spiraling. Something inside him darkened during that summer, a sense of abandonment, mixed with impulses he didn't understand. Impulses he kept hidden beneath silence and alcohol. The loneliness was crushing, the kind that presses on the bones. He walked around the house like he was waiting for what he couldn't explain. But the stillness didn't last long. June 18th, 1978. The day that would echo through decades. Jeffrey was driving down a rural road when he spotted Stephen Hicks, 18, shirtless, walking toward a rock concert. Hicks had long hair, a friendly smile, and an easygoing energy that Jeffrey instantly gravitated toward. Jeffrey slowed the car, rolled down the window. "You need a ride?" he asked, voice calm, almost hopeful. Hicks smiled, nodded, climbed in. A simple decision, a normal gesture, but one that turned catastrophic. Back at the Dahmer home, the two hung out for hours, drinking, talking, the radio buzzing softly in the background. But when Hicks said he needed to leave, something twisted inside Jeffrey. The fear of being alone again surged up, overwhelming, irrational. He grabbed the dumbbell and crushed Hicks' skull with a single blow. Hicks never left the house alive. But at the time, in 1978, no one knew. No one even suspected. Stephen was listed as a missing person, a case without leads, one name in a growing pile of disappearances across the state. Jeffrey cleaned the area in a panic, trembling, but not crying, not panicking in the way normal guilt would appear. Instead, he sat on the floor afterward, silent, numb, staring at his own shaking hands as if he didn't recognize them. He later confessed to detectives that he felt a strange calm afterward, a calm he didn't understand, a calm that scared him. When Lionel eventually returned to the house weeks later, Jeffrey acted normal, quiet, polite, helpful even. He kept the secret buried. No one could see the shift underneath, the subtle change in his posture, the way he lingered in the woods behind the house, the way his eyes seemed darker, but his voice softer. Hicks' vanishing became a mystery with no trail. Jeffrey became a young man walking around with a secret he carried like a stone inside his chest. This was the moment, the point of no return, when his path diverged forever from anything resembling a normal life. He had crossed a line that could never be uncrossed, and the world would not learn the truth for 13 long years. After Stephen Hicks disappeared, Jeffrey drifted through his days like a shadow trying to blend into the world. On the surface, he moved forward, graduating high school, pretending to plan a future. But inside, he was unraveling in slow motion. The Dahmer house felt emptier now, quieter, almost echoing. He walked through it with a kind of hollow purpose, drinking heavily, avoiding eye contact with neighbors, and numbing himself with routine. His father, Lionel, uneasy but unaware of the truth, encouraged Jeffrey to pursue college. Just try. Give it a shot. Structure will help, Lionel insisted one night, voice full of forced optimism. Jeffrey nodded slowly. Yeah, I'll try. Even though he already knew he was slipping too far for structure to mean anything. Ohio State University became his next stop. But Jeffrey couldn't keep up. He spent most nights drinking alone in his dorm room. The smell of alcohol clung to him like a second skin. After only a few months, he dropped out, His father was frustrated. With nowhere else to go, Lionel pushed him towards something more rigid: the U.S. Army. "Maybe this will straighten you out," his father said, voice tight, worn, hopeful. Jeffrey agreed quietly, eyes lowered, as if he were surrendering rather than enlisting. In January 1979, Jeffrey was stationed as a medical specialist in Germany. At first, it looked like he might adapt, but the drinking followed him like a shadow. He couldn't hold on to the routines, couldn't stay sober, couldn't keep up. Eventually, the army made its decision: an honorable discharge. Not for violence, not for aggression, but for alcohol. He returned to home, Ohio, but the tension grew thicker with every passing day. Joyce was gone, his younger brother gone, the house still carrying the old arguments like ghosts clinging to the walls. Jeffrey drifted through the rooms like someone who didn't belong anymore. Eventually decided he would make a fresh start at his grandma's home. So in December 1981, Jeffrey moved to 2357 South 57th Street, West Allis, Wisconsin, his grandmother's house. A small, quiet, tidy home with lace curtains, church decor, and the warm smell of old wood. His grandmother, Catherine, welcomed him with gentle eyes and soft words. At first, things seemed calm. He found work at a blood plasma center, but the loneliness crept back in. The urges, the drinking, the nights out, the lingering tension inside him that no amount of routine or kindness could fix. He began bringing men home late at night, slipping into the house with hushed footsteps, moving through the dark like someone trying not to be seen. His grandmother sensed something. She didn't know what exactly, but she felt the shift, the discomfort, the wrongness underneath the surface. Men that came with him never left his grandma's home. He enjoyed dismembering them, as he was fond of taxidermy since childhood. By 1982, neighbors began complaining about smells coming from the garage, from the basement, from Jeffrey's room. He always had excuses. Bad meat. I'll clean it up. I spilled chemicals. The freezer broke. His grandmother accepted the explanations, though she worried silently. She asked him once, in a soft, trembling voice, "Jeff, is everything all right? Are you okay?" He paused, eyes distant, then nodded. "Yeah, I'm fine, Grandma," he murmured. But he wasn't. He slipped deeper into alcohol, deeper into isolation, deeper into impulses he couldn't control. And although the Hicks incident had been buried, hidden under years and states and silence, the path that began in that Ohio house wasn't finished. It was waiting, watching, growing inside him again. And soon, very soon, Jeffrey Dahmer would cross another line, one that would pull Milwaukee into a nightmare no one saw coming. By 1985, Jeffrey Dahmer's life in his grandmother's house had settled into a disturbing rhythm. Quiet dinners, polite small talk, and late-night disappearances that no one fully understood. His drinking worsened. The urges he had tried to bury clawed their way back to the surface, growing sharper and more insistent with every passing week. His job at the Ambrosia Chocolate Factory in Milwaukee offered stable hours but little else. He worked the night shift, 11 p.m. to 7 a.m., in the mixing room, surrounded by metal vats and the low hum of machinery. The monotony helped keep him distracted, but not enough. He'd stare into the thick chocolate as it churned and imagine darker things. Bodies motionless, warm skin cooling, silence so complete it felt like ownership. On weekends he wandered into Milwaukee's gay bars and bathhouses, moving through the dim lights and cigarette haze with a quiet, detached curiosity. He bought men drinks, made shy conversation, and waited for the moment they let their guard down. The alcohol numbed him just enough to act, just enough to experiment. Soon Jeffrey began drugging men. Small doses slipped into their drinks, a pill crushed at the bottom of a glass, then waiting for them to grow drowsy, confused, limp. His goal wasn't assault. It was control, stillness, silence. I just wanted them to stay, he would later admit, in a hollow voice. The bathhouse incidents piled up. Management received complaints. Patrons whispered. After one man woke in a panic, unable to move his limbs, he told staff, "That blonde guy, Jeffrey, he drugged me." Police weren't called, but the bathhouse gave Jeff a final warning. When the incidents continued, they banned him in 1986. One night in September 1987, his urges surged past the point of control. He brought home a mannequin, taken from a store display, telling no one. He hid it in his closet, lying beside it at night, whispering to the unmoving plastic form, touching it like it could fill the void inside his chest. When his grandmother found it during cleaning, she confronted him, shocked, uncomfortable, trembling. "Jeff, this isn't right. You can't keep this here," she insisted. He didn't argue. He simply stared at the floor and whispered, "Okay," before disposing of it. But the fantasies didn't leave. They multiplied. They transformed. And one night, inside a gay bar called Club 219, Jeff met a 25-year-old man named Stephen Tuomi. Stephen was charismatic, friendly, warm, everything Jeff wasn't. They talked for hours, laughing quietly in the dim lights, drinks flowing between them. At the end of the night, Jeff murmured, "Let's get a room." Stephen agreed, unaware of the danger. Sitting across from him, they checked into the Ambassador Hotel, room 507, on November 20th, 1987. Jeffrey bought more drinks. The night blurred in his mind. He remembered flashes, Stephen leaning back on the bed, the two of them talking, the tension building in his chest like a storm. He slipped a sleeping pill into Stephen's drink, watching him grow sluggish. Everything after that became fragments. Jeffrey later said, "I don't remember doing it. I woke up and he was just there." But the scene in the hotel room told a far clearer, darker truth. Stephen's chest was bruised, his face beaten, his body limp on the bed. A violent struggle that Jeff claimed he couldn't recall. His hands trembled as he realized Stephen wasn't breathing, wasn't moving, wasn't coming back. Panic flooded him, but not enough to make him call for help. Instead, he stared at the body for minutes that felt like hours. Then he whispered to himself, voice shaking, "I didn't mean to. I didn't. I just wanted him to stay." But Stephen was gone. Jeff knew he couldn't leave the body there. He headed to a department store, bought a large suitcase, returned to room 507, and forced Stephen's body inside. He checked out of the hotel with the suitcase dragging heavily behind him, no one questioning the strained look on his face. He brought the suitcase back to his grandmother's basement. In the quiet darkness of that house, with his grandmother asleep upstairs, Jeffrey dismembered Stephen Tuomi. No sedatives, no drugs, no pauses, just the cold mechanical process of cutting, separating, disposing, the sound of the blade, the soft thud of flesh, the smell rising in the air. This time the violence wasn't accidental. It was methodical, controlled, intentional. He kept certain parts for longer than others. He boiled flesh off bone. He smashed bones with a sledgehammer. He cleaned the floor meticulously, scrubbing until his hands burned. By sunrise, Stephen Tuomi had vanished from the world, erased inside a small Milwaukee home where no one suspected a thing. But he didn't vanish completely. Jeffrey cut his head off, kept hidden in his father's chest close to his heart, so Stephen can be with him anytime he wants to. This moment, this night, marked the point of no return. Jeffrey Dahmer had crossed a threshold he could never come back from, and the spiral that followed would drag Milwaukee and eventually the entire country into a terror that still lingers decades later. After Stephen Tuomi's disappearance, Jeffrey walked through the world with a strange, unnerving calm. Something inside him had shifted. A door opened, a boundary erased. He returned to work at the Ambrosia chocolate factory like nothing had happened, blending into the night shift routine with his usual quiet obedience. No one suspected that the man whisking chocolate in steel vats carried a secret that weighed heavier than any ingredient in the room. At his grandmother's house, the basement became his private universe, a place where silence settled thickly in the air and shadows stretched long across the floor. He cleaned obsessively, wiping down every surface, every corner, every trace of what had happened. Catherine noticed the change, but didn't understand it. She watched him move with an eerie intensity, his eyes distant, his voice softer than ever. "Jeff, you're not yourself lately," she murmured one evening. He glanced up only briefly, replying in a whisper, "Just tired." In September 1988, Jeffrey made a mistake that exposed a fraction of his secret world. He invited a 13-year-old boy, Samsak Sinthasamphone, to his grandmother's house under the pretense of taking photos. He drugged him, but the boy managed to escape before things escalated further. Police intervened. Jeffrey, trembling and soft-spoken, tried to explain it away as a misunderstanding. He was arrested and charged with second-degree sexual assault. His father, horrified and confused, attended court hearings with a look of disbelief etched on his face. "Jeff, what is happening to you?" Lionel asked one night, voice heavy with pain. Jeffrey simply stared at the floor, hands clasped. "I don't know," though deep inside, he knew exactly what was happening. Waiting for sentencing, Jeff attempted to act normal again. He went to therapy sessions, held small talk with neighbors, and claimed he wanted to change. But it was all surface level. A thin mask, barely hiding the storm beneath. In March 1989, the court granted him a 1-year work release program, allowing him to keep his job at the chocolate factory while spending nights in the Milwaukee House of Correction. Judges believed he was remorseful. They believed he was salvageable. They believed the quiet, awkward man in the courtroom could be rehabilitated. But inside, Jeffrey remained unchanged. He served his time calmly, mechanically, never causing trouble, never raising suspicion. When he was released in May 1990, his life reset once again. But now, with fewer obstacles, fewer eyes watching, and fewer people who cared enough to intervene. He moved into an apartment at 924 North 25th Street, apartment 213, a place that would soon become infamous around the world. Small, dim, sparse, isolated. Exactly the type of environment where Jeffrey's darkest impulses could grow without interruption. And as he carried his belongings into the new apartment, closing the door behind him for the first time, He whispered something under his breath, a soft, chilling murmur, a promise to himself and to the darkness inside him. Because Jeffrey Dahmer wasn't trying to stop anymore, not even a little. Jeffrey Dahmer's first night at Oxford apartment felt like stepping into a world carved out just for him. The beige walls, the muted carpet, the cramped kitchen, none of it was impressive, but it was quiet, empty, and completely under his control. No grandmother's footsteps overhead, no unexpected questions, no rules. It was the kind of isolation he longed for and feared all at once. He unpacked slowly, placing each item with a strange precision. Clothes in drawers, chemicals under the sink. A new lock on the door he tested over and over again. When he finished, the silence pressed in around him so thickly that it felt like a living thing. He exhaled, a soft whisper escaping him. "This'll work. Yeah, this'll work." In late May 1990, Jeffrey met 37-year-old Raymond Smith, known as Ricky. They spoke briefly near a Milwaukee bar before Jeff offered money for photos. The line he used so often it felt rehearsed. Ricky followed him willingly, unaware of the darkness he was walking into. Inside the apartment, Jeffrey moved with quiet determination. The conversation was soft, casual. Drinks were poured, of course with a hint of drugs in it. Small talk floated between them. Ricky laughed. Jeffrey smiled faintly. He waited until the man went limp, then tightened his hands around Smith's throat, squeezing until everything went still. With the body lifeless, he posed it on the floor in unsettling, intimate positions, snapping Polaroids like he was preserving some private ritual. Later, in the bathroom, he carved the body apart with cold precision, boiling pieces down and dissolving the rest in acid. Only the skull remained, cleaned, dried, and placed in his cabinet, like a trophy he couldn't bear to let go of. Afterward, the apartment grew heavier. The air thickened with a smell Jeffrey tried desperately to manage. Cleaning, scrubbing, masking, opening windows at odd hours. For days, he sat alone in the dim light of his living room, replaying every detail. He told himself he needed to be smarter, quieter, more organized. His apartment had thin walls. Neighbors heard everything. He practiced moving quietly, practiced cleaning efficiently, practiced staying unnoticed. It became part of his routine, a twisted version of self-improvement. But soon, his neighbors began to notice the odd smells drifting from his door. Thick, chemical, sometimes spoiled, sometimes metallic. when one neighbor, Pamela, asked politely, "Hey, everything okay? Something smells kinda off." Jeffrey forced a laugh, rubbing the back of his neck. Yeah, sorry. I had meat go bad in the fridge. I'll get rid of it." His awkwardness made the excuse believable. People didn't question him. But the loneliness of apartment 213 grew sharper with each passing night. Jeffrey sat on his bed, staring into the dark, murmuring to himself as if arguing with an invisible version of his own conscience. One urging him to stop, the other pushing him deeper. The battle never lasted long. The darker voice always won. By June 1990, Jeffrey had crossed another line, a psychological one. The apartment no longer felt like a living space. It felt like a sanctuary for his urges, a sealed world where he could rewrite reality however he wanted. And once he realized the freedom apartment 213 gave him, he didn't hesitate to keep going. Because in Jeffrey Dahmer's mind, this wasn't the end of something. It was the beginning. Thanks for sipping tonight's tale with Haunted Brew. Don't forget to subscribe and sleep tight if you still can.